If you were starting your tabletop terrain collection from zero, where would you start?
For me, the answer to this question is crates and barrels. Crates and barrels are fantastic pieces of scattered terrain. You can find them in almost any context, you can stack them up in a variety of different ways, and there are all sorts of ways in which players can interact with them. Apart from being incredibly versatile, they're also dead easy to make. In fact, I made these out of nothing but paper and glue. So they also come out quite cheap. These worked out to about 2 cents a piece, but it could work out cheaper if you have a home printer. In this video we'll go over the entire design process so you can make your own. But if you just want to build some right now, you can go to the links in the description and you'll find the files that I posted for free in Patreon. You don't need to sign up for anything or pay anything. You can just download them, print them and assemble them. This video is timestamped and you can find the assembly instruction in the chapters. Now, if you're ready to do some papercraft, buckle up, because we're going in hot. We'll be working in Blender 3D. This is an epic piece of free software which I use all the time to plan out my builds. You can download it from the link in the description. We will only be using some very basic functions, so don't worry if you've never used it before. It's easier than it looks. We'll start by removing the default objects, we're not going to need those. Then we'll go over the tabs on the right and click the Scene tab. Since I'm working in metric, I'll go for measurements in millimeters, but you can go for inches or washing machines or whatever Americans use by switching the unit system to imperial. Next, we create a cube. The default is 2 meters, so we need to bring it down to a tabletop size. I went with 50 millimeters. I also unchecked Generate UVs here. We'll talk about what those are later, and normally you don't need to do this for simple shapes, as Blender can figure them out by itself fairly well. But we're going to do it manually because practicing on something simple like a cube helps you learn to handle more complex structures. Here I moved the cube up by half its height so its bottom face is sitting on the origin plane, which is totally unnecessary. It's just a meeting. We'll need to tell Blender how to unfold the cube. Again, Blender can usually figure this out on its own for simple shapes, but it's important to know how to guide it manually. What we're trying to achieve is this. Imagine you have a paper cube and you want to flatten it. Not like that. Imagine you want to flatten it without distorting any of the faces. You cut into some of the edges and then you can unfold it flat. This is exactly what we're going to do. Just ignore the tape, that's not part of the example. We make sure the cube is selected and hit Tab to go into edit mode. Then press 2 so that we can select edges instead of points. Now we can select the edges we want to cut and pick Mark Scene from the UV menu. The selected edges will turn red and show you where the cuts will be. We're ready to test our template now. The paper model exporter ships with Blender, so you already have it installed, but it's not enabled by default. You can enable it by going to the Preferences in the Edit menu and going to the Add-ons tab. Search for paper and once you find the plugin, make sure that the checkbox is ticked. Once activated, it should stay on for future use. To export, we'll make sure that the cube is selected and go to the Export menu under File. Since this is just a test, we leave all the settings as they are, except numbers, which I like to set to none. They just tend to get in the way. Hit Export and you'll have a PDF with our blank template. That looks okay, so we can go to the next step, which is coloring it in. We'll head back to Blender and hit the UV Editing tab. And we get the split screen with our UV map, which is currently empty on the left, and our model on the right. A UV map is just a way of telling Blender that the color of a particular point in a picture should be transferred to a specific point on the model. Of course, we don't have a picture yet, but we will want to generate the UV map first so that we can use that as a template. To do that, we select all the edges of the model on the right and pick Unwrap Conformal from the UV menu. We have the unfolded cube on the left-hand side. We can move this around a little to make things easier for us. In this case, I'm just changing the orientation and shrinking it a little so it doesn't touch the outer edges of the map. So we have a little more space to paint in. To turn this into a file we can paint on, we go to the UV menu on the left and select Export UV. Since we want this for printing, let's bump up the size to 2048 by 2048. You can leave the fill opacity as it is, but I like to increase it a little so that I can see what I'm doing more easily. We can open the generated PNG in any paint application. Here I'm using Krita, which is another great free application, but you can use any paint application you're familiar with. Just to see how this is going to work, let's paint something on the template and save the PNG file again. Hop back into Blender and switch to the Layout tab. We're going to add a material to the cube. There are a lot of settings here, but we don't need to worry about those. Instead, click the yellow dot next to base color and select image texture. Click open to load your PNG file in. Nothing will happen right away, but if we go to the top of the viewport and change the viewport shading to material preview, after a few seconds you'll see the texture mapped on the model. I'm going to skim over the way that I drew the texture here because, to be honest, I'm still learning the ropes with Krita, so I'm a bit all over the place. If you want to see something similar in detail, I have the whole process I used to paint the barrels in the linked video here. In reality, you could even photo bash this by taking some photos of wooden boards and pasting them over the template, so have fun playing with this. Once we have our final texture, we can export the paper model again. Again, we'll go with no numbers, but this time we'll change the textures to from material. I'm also going to lower the relative size of all the outlines to 1 so they're not as heavy. You can also uncheck the highlights if you don't want the white lines on your template. Now that you have a single template, you can use a PDF editor to make multiple copies on a single page. I use Affinity for this, which is, you guessed it, free to use. But I figure Word could also handle this. Right, so you've printed out your templates. How do we get these crates built? First off, we cut them out. I like to use a knife and a metal ruler for this, but most importantly, make sure you're working on a cutting mat. Even a thick chunk of card is okay, just as long as you don't damage your table. Once the templates are cut out, we lightly score all the edges so they're easier to fold. Here I'm scoring along the back, but you can do it on the front as well. We'll want to be very light here as we just want to score the paper, not cut through it. It's best to cut all the templates first and then do all the scoring because it's easy to fall into a repetitive pattern. And if you switch between cutting and scoring a lot, sooner or later you're going to cut something you shouldn't. After scoring, we can work the paper a little so it's already biased in the direction that we want to fold it. Now, put a tiny drop of PVA glue on one of the tabs and attach it to the inside of the nearest face. You don't need a lot of glue, but try to make sure it's evenly covered up right to the edge. You can also use your knife to make sure that the tab is fully in contact with the face. It should only take a few seconds of pressure for it to be fully bonded, and then repeat with the other faces. As an experiment, I tried filling the crates with paper scraps before I closed them. The idea is to give them some solidity so they're harder to crash accidentally. I don't know if this will work in the long run, so this is something to revisit in future. Most of the times you'll end up with some white edges, either exposed paper edges or wear on the paper from handling it. To hide these, you can go over them with a dark Sharpie. And that's your crate ready, although I would suggest a couple of layers of varnish to protect it before you take it to the table. Barrels are slightly trickier, but they're still very doable. Again, I've scored all the fold lines. It's especially important to score the center line that runs across the barrel here. Since the tabs on this one are so tiny, the best way I found to apply glue was a sewing needle. Just be careful, a tiny drop of glue goes a long way. As you glue the tabs to the sides, the paper should start curving up on its own. To join up the ends, it's easiest to do one tab at a time. Glue one tab in, give that time to set, and then add some glue to the other tab, and then fold it down. The ends of the barrel can be a bit fiddly, but the easiest way I found is this. Fold in all the tabs except one, and glue only that tab in. Then put it aside and leave it to cure. When it's ready, put a bead of glue all the way around the inside of the rim and push the lid down. Make sure all the tabs are inside the barrel. You might need to guide it a bit so it's neatly lined up with the sides, but in the end you should have a decent fit. Unlike the crates, I didn't fill the barrels with scraps. Their structure is fairly solid, and they seem to take the pressure used to handle regular miniatures fairly well. Now you should have enough barrels and crates to play with, but if you want to see how I use a similar process to make miniature buildings, check out this video here. Bye!